Welcome back to Desk Careers. I am so excited to bring another incredible guest. Today we are welcoming Dr. Arif Khan, who is the CEO and medical doctor at Neuropedia Children's Neuroscience Center, as well as the Consultant Pediatric Neurologist at King's College Hospital and the Director of Pediatric Neuroscience at Brazil Hospital Group. Welcome, Dr. Khan. How are you today?
Very well. Thank you so much, Maria, for having me on this session.
I'm so incredibly honored that you took time to be with us today. What a mouthful of things. So many hats, so many questions. I think I'm just going to jump right in and take you right to the beginning, probably those days that you spend reminiscing on and rarely have time to really talk about. Let's go back to your younger years. Can you remember being a younger teenager, Dr. Khan?
I'm still young, but I will probably go back a few years. Yes,
definitely.
Yes, I do. I grew up in this part of the world. So my dad moved into Dubai in 1971. That was the year of when UAE was formed. And then I was born in India, but I was brought up here from my first year onwards. So all my schooling and my early education has happened in this part of the world. And I've seen how this city has metamorphosized into this beautiful cosmopolitan metropolis that we know now as Dubai. And clearly it wasn't like this 40 years ago. So it's fair to say that I've seen it grow and where it is now and how education has progressed and improved over the years. When I was doing my schooling, we had 2 or 3 options that we could choose from. And but now, we are spoiled for choices here. So yeah, things have changed.
I think I'm even more excited about this interview now. And I think there are many students that will be watching this, not just here at Dubai English Speaking College, but also all over the community. And in knowing that you grew up here and you studied here, I think that you'll be able to understand and the challenges that they're facing for experiences of work shadow and work experience, you'll probably also be able to resonate with. Do you remember being a younger student in your secondary education? I know that human sciences was an interest for you, but when on that journey did you know what, it's going to be medicine? I know that's what I want to be doing.
That was my higher secondary school. So my year 11 and 12. In those days, after you complete your schooling, we were hitting a roadblock because the only option that was left for us was to move out. Now we have hundreds of different universities and colleges that you can choose from. This was not the case in late 80s and 90s. So the only option we had was to go back to a country that can offer you that kind of education. So by year 10, by year 11, I was thinking, okay, I have a knack towards human sciences, be it biology or chemistry and physiology, and that's what I was keen on. I was supported well by my parents, and then I decided, okay, should I think about moving out? And I decided to move to India because India is very well known for its medical education, and completed my medical school there, my post-graduation in pediatrics there. And then, of course, I needed to polish my expertise, and I had this keen interest in neuroscience. And that's when I moved to the UK. And since then, up until 2015-16, I was in the United Kingdom doing my education. So living about 16 years there. So that's in short how it took me to the place where I am now.
And neuroscience it's still quite a new part of the medical profession, isn't it? It's still, and it's ever evolving. I believe that this field is I don't believe anyone's ever going to say we know everything. I think it's always evolving and such an incredible part of medicine to be looking at. Can you take us back to that medical school experience? I know for young people, the idea of going to medical school, it's almost like that meme, what I think I'm going to be doing and what I'm actually going to be doing. And I know for a young person, the aspiration to go to medical school is they think, I just need to get the grades here in secondary education. And as long as I'm smart enough, I can be successful at medical school. Would you say that is correct? Or would you add a few things to that recipe?
I think passion is important. I think that's the key. Your grades, of course, matter to get you through the door. But I've seen a number of students who get through the door but they're not passionate about what they're doing, and they leave the course in between because it's not easy. At least your first 5 years of medical school are not easy. And because you're transitioning from a different culture, different country into a complete alien environment, you have to be strong enough to say, my passion and my goal to achieve this kind of supersedes everything else. The lack of the comfort that I was having in Dubai, all that was just basically I had to forget to pursue my goal. Neuroscience is not new. I mean, Maria, neuroscience has been there for ages. But even today, we know less than maybe 2% of what there is to know about the brain. The same thing cannot be said about, say, your bones or your heart or your kidneys, because we know a lot. We're much ahead with that. Neuroscience is such an intriguing, or neurology is such an intriguing aspect of medicine that we can never say we know even 5% of what there is to know. And the reason I went into neuroscience was because there is a saying that you need to confront your fears, and that's when the fear doesn't come back and the fear loses. And that's what happened to me when I was doing my medical school and my residency in pediatrics. I used to run away from neurology cases because, one, the examination for neurology is quite detailed and vast, and because there are a lot of gray areas. So I used to just run away from it. I used to hand over the cases off to my colleagues. But then I decided, okay, let me just confront this and let me go deep into it to understand it better. And that just became a passion, and I moved into neuroscience and neurology after that. And it's a rare entity now, pediatric neuroscience. We are probably 8 of us in UAE that are consultant pediatric neurologists, and many of them are based in government facilities at the moment.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples of when a patient would be referred to you, particularly to the field that you work in?
Yeah, it's quite wide. Let me start with some of the common reasons why parents bring their children to us. One is developmental delay. So the child is not meeting their milestones. 2, if they have a headache or migraine. 3, epilepsy, tic disorders, some stereotypies, children who have some behavioral issues, autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, kids who have neurometabolic conditions or neurogenetic conditions, kids who have low tone, poor muscle tone, poor power in their muscles. And it varies because your brain controls every aspect of your body. So the symptoms can present in different forms. And if it's related to brain, spine, nerves, or muscles, they do come to us. Yeah.
So looking back at the journey that you've taken, if you were 16, would you go and take it all over again?
I would actually. I would go and do it all over again, but do it better this time. But I won't change the field.
What would you do different?
What would I do? I would probably put in more effort to because the first few years of my medical school or my education, it took a long time for me to make neuroscience my passion. And if I have a chance to go back and restart it, I would not waste that time. I would utilize that even more to go much more deeper and utilize that time even better to be a better self of myself now.
And that's a very common response I hear from many, many guests who come through Desk Careers Spotlight interviews. What's really interesting is understanding where in the career journey that you knew this is my specialty. So you were just saying, if I could go back, I would pay more attention to this. But where on that journey did you think, you know what, I know it's medicine, but this is what I want to do?
Yeah. I mean, the moment you understand, once you're into that field, so once I'm in neuroscience or neurology, you understand that there is so much more that you don't know and you have to know. And your lifetime is not enough to know that. That's when you think, oh God, I have kind of not utilized my time appropriately. I don't know whether you've heard of this. We divide our knowledge into 3 categories. Something that it exists and you know that it exists. And the second category is something that exists out there and you don't know, but you know that you don't know. Okay. The third category is the most important, that there are things out there that you don't even know that they exist. And only when you know that they exist, you want to know what they are. So this is a bit more of a philosophical statement, but in neuroscience, a lot lies in this third category when new science and new concepts emerge and you think, wow, this is something new that we know as humanity, and I would love to know more about it.
Absolutely amazing. So what I'm hearing is it's having that constant curiosity of what's out there that I don't know about that I can be discovering, and how can that be evolving. Let's go deeper into the hats that you wear. Not only are you a medical doctor, but you're also an entrepreneur, aren't you? You're CEO of an incredible center here in the UAE called Neuropedia, Children's Neuroscience Center. And I know that aspiring medics, it won't matter how many times we tell them, you know what, don't just brush up on your sciences. You will be, in essence, in the business world. How do you balance those two hats? And when did you know, I don't just want to be a doctor, I want to take what I'm doing and I want to create something that doesn't exist?
I mean, let me start off from why Neuropedia was created. So when I moved here in 2015, I was working for a neuroscience facility here, which was mainly adults, and I built up the children's wing for them. And that's when I realized there is a massive demand for a holistic kind of approach to this science. And there were a lot of rehabilitation facilities in UAE which provided therapies to children. But there was no neuroscience facility that provided diagnostic and therapeutics for children. So something that encapsulates everything related to a child's neurological problem. And I saw that massive gap in an industry or in a health industry, which is really, coming up really fast in this part of the world. And there are a number of hospitals that provide general care and fantastic care, medical care to the population. But these niche areas or these super expertise areas like neuroscience are not as much dwelled into by these big organizations. And that's why I decided, okay, I have to do something about this. And that's when the concept of Neuropedia emerged. And obviously, I needed to build a team that can be a part of this and develop this even further. And that's when I met Dr. Aman and Dr. Reith, who's our operations head, and so forth. And now we have a fantastic team. We're opening soon in Sharjah to expand our service to Northern Emirates. And we have patients coming in from northern part of Africa, from eastern part of Europe, and Pakistan, India, just to get those services from us. And and I think the concept has evolved, and we know that demand is still there, and we have to reach out to more people. And that's our goal.
How do you balance the hats? When do you take off the doctor hat, and when do you put on the CEO hat?
Yeah, actually, I don't wear a hat. I am in a clinical facility. So I work 6 days a week. Fridays, mainly, I'm with my family. At times I do conferences or presentations. But I would say essentially 6 days a week. In those 6 days, I see patients every day. So I have clinics from 9 in the morning to 5 in the evening. The administration side of things or the business side of things are handled by my team, which is there. Initially, for the first 1 or 2 years, I was involved directly, but now I have a fabulous, competent team that's doing it. And I just troubleshoot at times. I pick up a phone or I send an email, and I do that between patients. Because I'm not a businessman. I am a clinician by heart, by brain, and by body. And I don't want to let go of that as such. Business came because there was a need to develop something where I had to take that jump and along with Dr. Aman to build something that we have control over and that we can do the way we want without having the umbrella over our head saying, okay, we have to financially make it lucrative or we have to get permissions from different investors. We didn't want that. So this gives us the liberty to practice neuroscience the way we kind of envisioned it.
Amazing. I know that your top tips are hang on to goals, be patient, and expect those bottlenecks. How do you believe that young people can learn from these top tips in a way that you wish you could have learned when you were younger?
Yeah. So I like writing. I still write. So for example, there are many people out there who use iPhones and iPads for taking notes and maintaining diaries. I have a book diary still with me with dates and times written. So what I tend to do is I look out for bottlenecks or hurdles. So throughout the day, if I have, say, 4 problems that I have came in front of me, maybe I won't have solved all of them, maybe I'd solved 50%. I would write down those problems and their outcomes at night before I go to bed. So that becomes my learning list. So I have faced problem 1, 2, 3, 4. Have they been solved? Yes or no? And then what I have learned from it. So when we talk about feedback or having an insight and understanding for yourself what are your strengths and weaknesses. Once you start doing that as an exercise, it becomes an automatic kind of phenomena that happens in your brain all the time. But if you always keep looking for the positives and forget about the negatives and just say, okay, this has happened, it's bad, let's forget and move on, you won't learn from it. So I always tell my students, because I'm also an associate professor at Mohammed bin Rashid University, teaching medical students there. And I tell them that if you made a mistake, I would actually focus more on that mistake, not just forget it, and find out why it happened, how it should not happen next time, and what do I learn from it. So it's how you perceive your day-to-day problems and hurdles and what you learn from them and how you make a note of that. That'll help you kind of develop your overall personality and your overall competency moving forward.
Amazing. And do you believe that by doing this type of reflexive inquiry and really thinking inward to what did I learn, how did I overcome an obstacle or a bottleneck, and what will I do different moving forward? Do you believe that that's a great strategy for a young person to use to prepare for an upcoming medical school interview?
Absolutely. And as I said, you asked me this question, if I go back, what would I do differently? This is something I would do differently. I would actually reflect on this from early on. I wasn't doing this when I was in my secondary school or even my medical school. I started doing this maybe 15, 20 years ago when I was a doctor working in a neuroscience department. And if I can give one message to the students out there, it's that this is the time you need to start reflecting. And reflection is the best way. One skill that I want with me to stay with me and enhance is reflection. And that gives you a better insight. That makes you a well-rounded person, a well-rounded professional, and that helps you enhance your skills moving forward.
I could keep on asking you so many questions, but I'm very conscious of your time, and let's bringing this to a quick close. But before we do, if we could ask you, thinking about all those highlights in your career to this point, with so many more highlights definitely to come, what would stand out for you this far in your career?
I would say 2 points. One is me moving from England down to Dubai. So this was almost like a return back to my roots. And I had always planned this from the time I had left Dubai for my education. And the second one would be when Neuropedia was established as a facility, and when the first patient entered and gave us a good feedback. And these two will stick with me probably throughout my life. And beyond my personal milestones in my professional world, these are the two most important moments that I would never forget.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Khan. It was such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for joining us. And that brings us to the end of an incredible interview. Today, we were speaking with Dr. Arif Khan, who is the CEO and medical doctor at Neuropedia Children's Neuroscience Center. And we'll see you all at our next Desk Careers Digital Spotlight.